Zok the Heilige Mishnah on Daf Peizayin Omid Beis. Shire Miktus Haget Bekosfoy Bedaf Hashem. We had two columns. The first half of the get was written on the first column, and then they continued to write it on the second column. So if you would just slide them together, it would read perfectly as one get. And the Eidim are signed under the bottom of the lower part of the get. Kosher, this get is kosher. What if the Eidim signed at the top of the margin, on the top margin of the get, or minatzad, or on the side margin, or me'achara, or on the back of the get, in a get that's not a get mekusher, the get pashut, puzzle, that get is going to be puzzle. How about hikif roishay shalzeh, bichet roishay shalzeh? Very simple. You took a long piece of cloth to write the get on, and they took he wrote the gittin just like this, where the tops of the two pages were connected. Now I have two separate pages here, but imagine if this was one long page. This get, the top of it was here written this way. This get, the top of it was here written that way. And this signature was right in the middle, which is basically at the top of both gittin. So the halacha is, they're both possible. Now, Tosfos asks, if you sign at the top margin, even one get is possible. So if you have two gittin together and you're signing on both top margins, of course it would be possible. So Tosfos he explains why it was a chiddush. I don't want to get into that, but there's definitely a shayla to be asked here. What about soifay shalzeh, bitzat soifay shalzeh? Again, one long paper, but they were connected at the bottom. So the top of this get, actually, I should hold it accurately. Here's the top and here's the top. So this get, where my finger is the top of this get, where this finger is the top of this get, and there was one long paper connected at the bottom, and again there was a chasima at the bottom. So here, at least one of the gittin has its chasima in the right position. Zok the Gemara, be'edim be'emtza, esho edim nikun imoy kosher. The get that has the edim signed right side up, not upside down, that will be the kosher get. How about roy shoy shalzeh b'tzat soifay shalzeh? So basically, you have one on top of the other. You have one on top of the other. Top, here's the top, and here's the top. And there's a signature here all the way at the bottom, or there's a signature in the middle, that is, side in the middle. So the signature is below the top get, but above the bottom get. So the halacha is esher edim nikrin b'soifay kosher. The get has edim signed below it, that's the get that's going to be kosher. What about get shekos for Ivris? It was written in Hebrew ve'edav Yavanis, but the edim signed in Greek, or Yavanis ve'edav Ivris, or eid echad Ivri ve'eid echad Yavani, or ksav soifer ve'eid is going to be kosher. Now we had ksav soifer ve'eid 2 or 3 times in the Masechta, and we had a machlokes as to what it meant. And the Gemara is going to elaborate here, but the two pshatim of what it could mean is either ksav soifer ve'eid. There's only one eid sign, but we recognize the handwriting of the soifer, so we know the soifer wrote it. That's one option, which is a chiddush, because there's only one signature here. We count the handwriting of the soifer as an independent signature. The other option was ksav soifer ve'eid, means the soifer actually signed it. So the soifer is one of the eidim that signed, and there's a third party aid. And the chiddush of that we're going to get into when we get up to the Gemara. What if someone writes ish ploni aid? Not the father's name, but he says aid at the end. Kosher, that's considered good. What if he just wrote ben ish ploni aid? Instead of his name, he just said the son of somebody else aid. Again, it's kosher. What if he says ish ploni ben ish ploni? V'loy kosev aid. He didn't say the word aid at all. Kosher, that would be kosher as well. In fact, the Nikiyei Adas Yerushalayim, who wanted to be concise and not have too many words, that's how they used to do it. What about Kosev Chanichasoi v'Chanichasoi? And this is a nickname, Lagabe, the last name. And when we learn the Gemara, we're going to see what it means is, they normally, if your father's name is Yaakov, you would call yourself Reuven ben Yaakov. But there were people who used a grandfather's name as the family name. As a matter of fact, my name, Simon, is really the name is Shimon. In Europe, the family's last name was Shimon. Why? Because there was a grandfather in our lineage whose name was Shimon, and we adopted his name as a last name. So if you do, it's going to be Kaf. And the Gemara is going to discuss how many generations back can you use your grandfather's name. Eventually, it's going to expire. Zok the Gemara, on the first case where you had the first half of the get was written in the right column, and the second half was written in the left column directly below. So technically, if you could squish it together into one long column, they would line up perfectly. That's a good get. Frank Gemara, why? The fact that he wrote it funny should raise an alarm bell, should raise a red flag that maybe something untoward occurred here. Maybe these were two separate gittin, and it lined up perfectly. And maybe it lined up ever so perfectly. The Gozdiel is man de Basra. They cut off the top of the first get, and the Eidim the Kama and the bottom of the first get, and they're trying to combine two get. Means one get was written for person A, and the other get might have been written for person B, and it's a puzzle get. So how can we just assume that it's one get? Since there's something funny going on over here, maybe this is two getting that are psul. The top get, it wasn't cut off below it. The clock continued. So we know that there wasn't a full get there. Okay, Frank Gemara, but what about the left column? Maybe the second get was an independent get, and the top of it was cut off to make it line up perfectly. Just like we answered a moment ago, we can use the same teretz to say that on the top wasn't cut off. There was actually cloth there. So it's clear that the other get, the second column, was not cut off. And now we're on the top of Peiches Amud Aleph, which is today's daf. Once again, the reason why we're nitpicking here, maybe there's a problem, is because this is unusual to have a get spread across two columns. So maybe what happened is he wrote the first half of the get, and then he decided, you know what, I just changed my mind. I don't want to divorce my wife, which would render the first half of the get puzzle. Yet, when he changes the mind again that he wanted to be Begarsh's wife, he didn't want to write the whole get over, so he just continued on the second half. Maybe that's what occurred, and then in fact this get is puzzle. Dr. Gemara, I'll tell you why we're not choshed that. The cause of harayat milamata umiteres milamayda. There's phrases in the get. If a guy changes his mind, it's likely that he'll change his mind after he completed a phrase. In the middle of a phrase, to change his mind is not such a likely occurrence. And therefore, we won't assume that that's what happened. Dr. Gemara, maybe you should be choshed, even though it's something that's only remotely possible, because the fact is you have something funny going on over here. Even if we have something funny going on here, the way the get was written, but you're not choshed to such an extent that smack in the middle of a phrase, he changed his mind. Rabashi, let's not answer all the other kashas that it's speaking with this cloth here and this cloth there. We don't have to worry it was cut. Forget all that. Simple teretz. You looked at the cloth. Cloth isn't mechanically made; it's naturally occurring. So it has patterns in it. You were able to look and see that this was not tampered with at all, and therefore you know that there's no funny business over it. We said that if the Eidim sign on the top margin, that's not a kosher again. Frank Gemara, are you telling me signing in the margins is not a good get? Rav would sign his stars on the side margin. Zok to Gemara, but it depends on how you sign on the side margin. Hasam bishe gagoi klapik saf. So let's have a look. I have over here a letter, right? Here is my side margin. So I could sign two ways. Either I could sign like I'm looking at the document, and then over here I sign my name right side up. So the top of my signature will be directly below this side margin. That would be, I'm signing on the veracity that this is a good start. But what if I signed over here, not right side up, but upside down? So the bottom of my signature faces here. Then you have to be chayshit that I'm not signing for this. I'm signing for something that was written here that got cut off. So the reason why Rebbe, or the reason why Rav would sign me that tzad is because he signed when the top of my signature is facing the ksav. So that shows I'm signing. Our Mishnah that says signing on the side margin, on the top margin is not good, that's when the bottom of my signature is up against the ksav, and that would indicate that maybe my signature wasn't for that. Frank the Gemara, that's not a good shot. Because the Katani Hikif Rosh Rosh the second case of the Mishnah, where the tops of both gets were together, the Adam and Adam signed in the middle. Shneim Psul, they're both possible. Why? If you're telling me that according to Rav, if the top of the signature is up against a get, it will be a good get. So at least the get that has a signature, the top of the signature up against it, at least that get could be a good get. So to Gemara, our Mishnah is speaking in a case where it's the Rami Laka Ivra. The signature was perpendicular to the text on the get. So it was like a bolt connecting the top get with the bottom get. That's possible for sure, because that doesn't align with any one of the get. Frank Gemara, you cannot say that that's on our Mishnah, because our Mishnah also have cases where the get's good, and Pashtus it's the same case. Yachim Sefer the Katani Roisha Shel Zeh Bitzat Soifai Shel Zeh Yo Edim Be'emtza, and what steht in the Mishnah Esho Edim Nikrin B'Soifai Kosher. How could there be any Edim Nikrin B'Soifai if it's written perpendicular? The signature is not, the top of the signature is not facing this get, nor is it facing the other get, because it's perpendicular. LMI, we have to abort that whole shot. And Avada, our Mishnah is speaking in a case where the ksav is parallel to the ksav. And in fact, if you sign on the top margin or on the side margin, no matter what direction, it would not be good. So how did Rav sign on the side? Teretz Rav wasn't talking about stories that needed a signature. The Rav B'diske have a chassid. Rashi learns diske means when he would be mazmin someone to the Torah, he would sign on the side. So it's not something that has a halois. It's not such a. It's not like a shtar choyv. It's just a letter. Others in this case are plain letters, but it wasn't something that's like legal tender, and therefore he signed there. But Avada, our Mishnah says, for a get, for a shtar, that would not be a valid signature. Givaldik. Get chikos for Ivris, and then the last part of the phrase was ksav soifer be'eikra. So now we're going to get into what this means, the two pshatim. It's not that there's only one signature on the get, and we're just relying on the handwriting of the sefer. No, it's speaking where the sefer is signed as a second name. Now, if you remember, we learned, this has to be going to Rabbi Yosy, who holds immediately in Memser and the Shliach. Why is that? Because there's a very big danger if the sefer signs the get. Because it's very possible that what happened is the husband told these two agents to sign the get and told the sefer to write the get. And what could happen is that the two signatories who are going to be signing the get that the sefer wrote feel a little bit uncomfortable, because here the sefer is trusted to write the get, yet the husband doesn't want him to sign it. So they'll tell him, you know what, you could sign and only one of us will sign. But if that's not the instructions of the husband, the get will be possible, because the husband said Reuben and Shimon should sign, not the sefer whose name is Levi. And if the sefer signs, it's possible to get, because it's against the instructions of the husband. So therefore, if you ever see that a sefer signed the get, you have to disqualify it, because it might be improper. It might not have been ordered by the husband. But if you hold like Rabbi Yosy, that immediately memter l'shliach, then the sefer would only have been able to sign the get if he heard it directly from the husband. And therefore, if you hold like Rabbi Yosy, then you never have to worry that a sofer signed a get when the husband didn't want him to. Because the sofer would be knowledgeable to know that he's not allowed to sign that get unless he got instructions directly from the husband himself. And that's why Chassam Sofer, the age, Shaninu, is going according to Rabbi Yossi, where there's no danger that this could be a problem. Because the Sofer for sure was appointed to sign the get if we see that he did. So Dr. Gemara, Hahui Ksubas Chasanim, I guess it was a Ksuba, which is a star. The also the Kamei de Rabavo. It came to Rabavo to assess it. Maybe there's an ear on it. Is it a good Ksuba? The Havayadi Letufsa, they were able to recognize the handwriting of the Sofer, and they know, I can tell this is Levi's Ksav. Ulechasimis Yoda de Chatzad. Out of the two Eidim signed, they were only able to be Mekayim one of the signatures. So you have the handwriting of the Sofer, and you only have the signature of one of the two Eidim. Sover Lachshura. Rabavo wanted to be Masheret because it's Ksav Sofer Ve'eit. Amalei Rabbi Yirmiyah, no, you shouldn't be matter this star. Chasam Sofer Shanim. We would accept if the Sofer signed it, but here he didn't sign it at all. Therefore, you require the chasima of the two. Zok the Gemara Vayter. Chadav chanichasoi v'chanichasakov. Tonu Rabbanon. Chanichas avois begitin ad yudoyers. You can use a grandfather's name as the last name for 10 dollars. But after 10 dollars, we would say it's a shinu shem and it wouldn't be kosher. Rab Shimon ben Elazar Omer Gimel dollars. You cannot use a grandfather's name more than 3 generations. Gimel dollars kosher mikan beilach posel. So now that we have the machlokes of $10 or $3, Kimad Naz Laha Domer Rab Chanina. This halacha that we're about to quote from Rab Chanina, is it consistent with Rab Shimon Elazar of $3, or is it consistent with the first shita, the first Tana of $10? What did Rab Chanina say? Kasav chanichas avos begitin ad gimel doiros. Come on, that's clearly like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Amar Afuna, my Kara. Where do you find a remez in the pasuk that 3 dollars is the amount of dollars that you could still call a father's name? Dr. Gemara, it's from a pasuk in Devarim that we lane on Tisha B'Av as well, and the Gemara is going to elaborate on this pasuk. It says in the pasuk, "He signed banim uvnei banim v'nei shantem." So the Gemara darshins, he signed banim. Let's see Rashi. Kisaylate banim. Kisaylate is 1 door. Banim hainu door base. Ubnei banim hainu door gimel. So for 3 generations, that's called after the grandfather. Mikan ve'elach par levin ashanta. Kisaylate banim ubnei banim, and after that, if you want to go a generation further, it's vinay shantem. It's already considered as shinui. So that's not tied to the pasuk, but therefore, it tells us that after the 3rd generation, it's considered a shinu. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. The Gemara is going to darshan that pasuk of Yisrael banim uvnei banim, but first we'll have a little bit of an introduction, and then we'll get into the darshaning of the pasuk. It says in the pasuk, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi told us, Loi charva Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael was not charav, and this is referring to the churban bias rishon. Until 7 batei dinim, and it doesn't just mean one person, it means a dynasty of dayanim, even multiple generations. 7 dynasties of Malchi Yisrael. Until that happened, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't destroy the Beis Hamikdash and throw Klal Yisrael into Galus. And the Maral explains, what's up is 7, because 7 totally corrupts us and separates us from the Rebbeinu Shalom. Because if you're in a box has 6 sides. The 7th is the interior of the box. It's 1 cube of corruption, completely cut off from the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's why Rachman al-Tzlon we had the Churban. The Elohim, what are these 7 dynasties? Yerovam ben Nevat, he was Machshol Yidin with Avodah Zarah. He was a Melech Yisrael. Ubasha ben Achia, the Achav ben Imri. Well, Imri himself was an Oibid of Avodah Zarah. So why does it start the dynasty at Achav? The Teretz is Achav is the 2nd generation, but he was worse than Imri, so that's why The Gemara refers to this corrupt dynasty as Achav and Imri. The Yehu ben Nimshi, Upekach ben Ramalyo. I don't have the Kludus in front of me, so I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it properly. Umenachem ben Godi, the Hoshea ben Allah. Hoshea was granted the king who actually took away some of the damage that Yerovam ben Nevat. And we're going to get to that in a minute. Shenamar, where do you see that 7 generations or 7 dynasties of corruption destroyed the Beis Hamikdash? It says Umlo Yoledes, the children that are completely destroyed. Umlo Yoledes Hashiva, the Umlo of the 7, the birth of the 7, the products of the 7, meaning the 7 dynasties of Avodah Zarah. Navcha Navsha, their souls were destroyed. Ba Shimsha B'Yoma, their demise, their sunset came while they should have still been shining. They prematurely were destroyed. Busha Chafar. Let's read the pasuk inside where I have Nekudos. It says, Umala Yoledes Hashiva Nifcha Navsha Bashimsha B'Yoimam Boisha V'Chafra. And then the pasuk continues, Sharisam L'Charavetain L'Fnei Aveim Numasham. Rahman L'Tzlan. After these 7 generations, and I don't mean generations, I mean dynasties of Avodah Zarah, it led to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. How do you see that in the pasuk that we're discussing in the Vorah? Zok Gemara. Omer Avami Maikar. Where do you find a remiss to this in the Psukim? It says Kisoyled Bonim Uvnei Bonim, and that means 7 corrupt dynasties. Where do you see 7 corrupt dynasties? Kisoyled Bonim Uvnei Bonim. So the little toys was here at the bottom of the It says Kisoyled is Chad, is 1 door. Bonim is 2 doros. So that's 1 and 2 is 3. And then you have Uvnei is another 2. That's 3 and 2 is 5. And then Bonim is another 3 door. Hooray 7, that's how you have 7 doros until the Bnei Shantem, where we were thrown out of Eretz Yisrael. Zog to Gemara. Omer Rav Kahana, Rav Asi L'Ra. Ksiv Bey B'Hoshea ben Allah. Says about Hoshea ben Allah, V'yasara B'nei Hashem. However, the pasuk says, "Rak loy kemalcha Yisrael," but he wasn't as bad as the other Malcha Yisrael. He wasn't as bad. Uchsiv alav, it says on Hoshea that Allah Shalmanatzer, he was the one who was destroyed and made subservient to the king Shalmanatzer, the Goyish king. Vasepis, he wasn't so bad. Amar lahu oitan pardonsios, those guards shahoishiv Yeravim aladrachim, that Yeravim set up to prevent people from being oil regel, kadesh lo yalu Yisrael regel. Boy, Shayu Bitra. Moshe did a good thing. He stopped these guards and he created freedom of religion. He let people come to the Beis Hamikdash to be oil regel. The Aval Pikein lo olu Yisrael regel. Yidden weren't interested in going anymore. After all the years of Yeravim, they didn't go, even though they were able to go. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu. The years that they didn't go to the Oil Regel, they're going to be captives for that period of time. So the question is, I don't understand. The other leaders promoted Avodah Zarah. Hoshea shut down Avodah Zarah. And just because they didn't go to the Oil Regel in his days, is that a reason why Klal Yisrael should be destroyed and we should be thrown out of Eretz Yisrael? So I saw a beautiful pshat that Mesivta brings down, I believe from the Morale, but I'm not 100% sure. A beautiful pshat. It says, if you think about it, when you're going to the Oil Regel, all of Klal Yisrael are abandoning their property, they're abandoning their herds and chosim, and they're just going up there to Israel. What stops any enemy from just rolling right through and taking over everything? And then when they come back, they lost everything. They're leaving the entire land of Eretz Yisrael undefended. The teretz is, it says, Lo yachmoid ishes artzecha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, if you come to the Oil Regel, I'm going to stand guard. I'm going to protect your land, that it will be protected from marauders. Oibazoi is beautiful. What protected them from marauders? Even though they had a but they had the protection of the Lila Regal. Once the protection of the Lila Regal was removed because they didn't go beyond the Regal, they were fair game. They were left wide open to be destroyed from the Goyim. So even with the Avodah Zarah, they would have been saved had they been idle already. Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Ukva, Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Rav Yirmiyah. Darash Merema, Meremer Darshan. Ma'idich Siv, it says in the pasuk, not them Hashem destroyed us. By Yishkoid Hashem al Ra. Hashem brought it quickly. He was diligent to bring the bad for us quickly. By the and he brought the bad on us. You know why Hashem did that? He tzaddik Hashem alakeinu. Because Hashem is a tzaddik. Right? The Gemara. We should be tzaddik Hashem alakeinu. By Yishkoid Hashem al Ra. Because Hashem is a tzaddik, that's why Hashem brought bad to us quickly. Adarabah. If Hashem is a tzaddik, he should hold bad back from happening to us. Elo tzedakah asa kadosh baruch hu in Yisrael. Hashem did a big tzedakah with Klal Yisrael. What did he do? Shehigla golut tzidkiyahu v'adayin golut yechanya kayem. Now, right away at the beginning, they put the enemies put King Yechanya into Golus, and he sent him to Bavel, to Nahardoha, with all of the Talmidei Chacham generation. And then there were stragglers, Jews left for 11 more years. And 11 years later, they were sent down. The remaining people from the Golus, which was called Golus Tzidkiyahu, they were sent down. Really, that was supposed to happen 2 years later. Hashem hastened it up by 2 years, we're going to see. Why? Because Hashem wanted that when Tzidkiyahu comes down with his chavra, Yechanya will still be there in the business. Because if not, then what would have happened is Yiddishkeit would have fizzled out. Because the goals of Tzidkiyahu wasn't a strong Jewish group who were Talmidei Chachamim. So they would show up in a foreign land, they would lose it all. But when they were there, Yechanya and his Talmidei Chachamim were still strong and dominant. And therefore, when the Golus Tzidkiyahu came, they blended right in, and they also continued with this Torah. Otherwise, we would have been totally lost. Pasuk Pshat is that these special carpenters and tradesmen, there were 1,000. But we died from the Cheresh Miskar is Cheresh. These were used Talmidei Chachamim when they were talking, learning, when they were passing things. Natu Akol Kecharesh, and everybody was silent. They couldn't speak because they were so choshev and recognized as Talmidei Chachamim that everyone was quiet to listen to what they were going to say. And Miskar is Kivin Shesoigrim Shuv Einon Poitzkin. If they didn't have the answer to something, nobody could possibly attempt to answer something. These were the ultimate Talmidei Chachamim. The Kama and how many of them were there? Elef, they were 1,000. It's actually a shayla that there was 1,000 of each, or 1,000 total. Ula Amar Shehikdim Shtei Shanim Levin Shantem. Hashem brought the Golus 2 years before the Vinay Shantem. We need to bring up a pasuk. I need to show this to you inside. So I'm going to take a break for a minute to bring a chumash because we need to see this inside the chumash. 1 second, please. Okay, let's go. It says in the pasuk, "Kisaylid bonim uvnei bonim." In Parshas Devarim, Perek Dalet. Let me read it to you. It's a hafel dikashtikkel. A hafel dikashtikkel. Kisaylid bonim uvnei bonim. Parshas Devarim. Oh, I'm sorry, it's in Pashas Veschanan, I apologize. Kisaylid bonim uvnei bonim, v'noishantem ba'aretz. The Gemara tells us v'noishantem ba'aretz means that you're going to live in Eretz Yisrael for the amount of years. That's the gematria of v'noishantem. From when Yeshua brought Klal Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael until they were thrown out after the Bayis Rishon was 850 years. But the gematria of v'noishantem is 852 years. So really, the Torah says when you're going to be in Eretz Yisrael for 852 years, and what are you going to do there? You're going to do avodah zarah. You're going to do bad things. The next pasuk is the punchline. You are going to quickly be destroyed. So the question is, if you're going to be there for 852 years and you're going to do avodah zarah, you know what's going to happen? You're going to be completely destroyed. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu did us a favor. He didn't let us remain there for 852 years. What he did was, he only let us be there for 850 years. Okay, Moshe says he does not hear me, so let me change my speaker. And Moshe, can you try speaking now? Maybe I will hear you. Still do not hear you, so let me do let me test my speakers. Now I should hear you. So my speaker is working. If I can't hear you, there could be something wrong with your speaker. Okay, gewaltig. So let's see the Gemara weiter. So this is unbelievable. So if you're going to be there for V'nai Shantim for 852 years, then it could lead to Chas v'Shalom Ovei Teved Kabet Avdim. But since Hashem was good to us, He took us out 2 years earlier. That's why Hashem did us a favor. He took us out earlier from Eretz Yisrael. He made us go to Golus. He punished us earlier to save us from a complete annihilation of Ye'avoid Tevedun Maher. Unbelievable. Now, so it's one of two things that we're happy that Hashem made us go into Golus earlier. Either because it allowed the Golus of Tzidkiyahu to be down in Babel to connect to the generation of Talmidei Chachamim, A, or B, it's so that we shouldn't have 852 years. So everybody knows there's a famous rule when it comes to gematrias, and that is, if you're one off, it's good enough, because you'll say with the koil it adds up. Where does that come from? So the Meforshim tell us it comes from this Rashi over here, because Hashem had to take us out 2 years early to avoid the V'nai Shantim. Why didn't Hashem take us out 1 year early? Why didn't Hashem punish us 1 year early? Instead of 852, 851, we could have had an extra year in Eretz Yisrael. The teretz is, if Hashem would have only waited till 851 to throw us into Golus, with the Kohen, we would still be having a Shantim, and we would still suffer the Avei Tevedim. So therefore, in order that it shouldn't line up with the Gematria, Hashem had to throw us out of Eretz Yisrael by year 850. Now I want to ask everybody a question, and I suggest that you make sure your wife cannot hear what we're talking about. When your wife asks you, take out the garbage right away, quickly, how do you understand what that means? So I was polling the oilam today. Some people say 10 minutes, some people say 5 minutes, some people say before the next garbage day. Moshe says now, immediately. But I want to say this much, Sheikh Shalom Bayis, Maher, quickly, what is the definition of Maher? It says in Turkey, avoid Tovedun Maher. What does quickly mean? So let's have a look. We're going to turn on to Beis, and the Gemara is going to tell us what is the definition of Maher. So when your wife says, do this quickly, in order to comply according to the Torah, what does it mean? Zok the Gemara, Amar of Achabar Yaakov, Shmami no Mehera, the Mori Alma, when Hashem says fast, quickly, Hamni Meya v'cham shenu d'tartihu. It means 852 years. That's what fast means. So I'll tell my wife, I was faster than the Rebbeinu Shloim. I did it in less than 852 years. But Toys ask some bomba questions on this halacha. Correct Toys, Vim Taimai, the top Toys. Nehida v'shenichnusu la'aretz achiyotzu yesh kol kach. Yes, there were 850 years from when they entered Eretz Yisrael till when they were thrown out. But mikol makom me'az lo yavdu avodah zarah. It means 852 years of avodah zarah. They weren't doing avodah zarah from the moment they stepped into Eretz Yisrael. The Oidik Sherab Lachanan, Vidilma Toivedu Maher means Achim and Eshantim Kalmar. Maybe Oidik Toivedu Maher doesn't mean Maher from the time where you started doing avodah zarah. Once you're condemned, then Maher comes right away. Immediately after the 852 years, bam, it happens right away. Boy Mary, Zoktari, the Mitchila Miyat, Hoyu, Oivdei Avoidus Kechavim. The moment Klal Yisrael entered Yisrael, Rachman Laton, they already got off on the wrong foot. The Petzel Micha was brought with them. So they were already handling in Avodah Zarah right away. And therefore, we say that Maher is referring to the whole period of time. But the other thing you have to know is that's the Moreh Alma. We are humans. Our Maher is more like what Moshe Stern writes, and that is now, when our wife tells us to do so. Now we're studying another fascinating thing. Get Ma'usa. Get Ma'usa be Yisrael kosher. A coerced get that's done through a proper bezdin is a kosher get, which is quite noisy at Sandi. But if you hire a guy to coerce your hated son-in-law to divorce your daughter, that's a puzzle. Now there's a shayla how to learn this, but the maskana of Toysis is when can you use the services of a goy? If Bezdin paskins that coercion is necessary, Bezdin can hire the services of goyim to coerce and convince the person to write a get. So when they beat him, they don't say give a get. They say, we're going to beat you until you follow the instructions of the Bezdin. As long as that's how it goes down. Bezdin hires these goyim to rough him up, and they specifically say, we're not telling you to do anything other than what the Bezdin is asking you to do. That would be a kosher get, even though it's coerced. Get hamu'usa be Yisrael kedin. If the get is done through a yid and it's done properly, kalacha, kosher, that's a kosher get. Shaloi kedin, if a yid did it, but it was shaloi kedin, possible. The get is possible, meaning the woman may not remarry. But nevertheless, with poisel, it still has a reich a get, and such a woman would no longer be able to marry a cut. What if oivdei kechavim coerced the get? Kedin, even if they did it, well, they did it properly, possible, the get is possible. Yet, poisel, it still is considered a reich a get. Shaloi kedin, but if they did it completely unlawfully, afilu reich a get ein boy. Doesn't even have a reich a get. Frank the Gemara, what is the explanation behind it? If under any circumstances there is a situation where the forced get that a goy forces is valid, well then is kashturi nami l'skasher. So then, if it was done kedin, why do we say possible? It should be a kosher again. And the if a goy under no circumstances can coerce a get, it'll never be valid. Well, then, if that's the case, mifsal or lifsal. Why does it even have a right to get? The popular from Kahuna. A goy's get is never anything. Amar Mishasha, I'll tell you the reason. Because the Torah get mu'usav the chavim kosher. Minat Torah, it's a perfectly valid get, even if the goy is the one who's coercing. Uma tam omru pasul. Why did the Rabbanon say that we're not going to recognize the get that was coerced through a goy? Any woman who wants to marry somebody else, who wants to leave her husband for no good reason, will hire the mafia to beat the living daylights out of her husband to force him to give a get. So in order to avoid that, the Rabbanon put a blanket disqualification on any gittin that are coerced through a goy. Frank the Gemara, if that's the case, even if the goy coerced somebody when it wasn't proper, afilu reach haget einboy, why would you say that it doesn't have a reach haget? It should be no worse than when a yid does a coercion improperly. And it should pass because mikra din midaraisa, the coercion of a guy is a good coercion. Ella hadr of mashasha bedusin. Mashasha must be mistaken. His pshat has to be wrong because if his pshat was right, then midaraisa, a coerced get from a guy is a good get. Then avada it should pass. So the territory, the coerced get of a guy is not a good. The time of night. Why is it? What was our original kasha? Why is it that if the get was done kedin, it's possible paisa? Why is it even paisa? It should be nothing at all because midaraisa the get of the guy is nothing. So tomorrow, because we might confuse it with the get of a yid. The time might kedin b'chedin the Yisrael mich. If the guy coerces for the right reason, we can confuse it with a yid who coerces for the right reason, and there would be a good get. So because of that, we say the get passes, even though me'ikra din, the guy's coercion is nothing. But shaloikadin, when a guy's doing shaloikadin, b'chedin the Yisrael, b'chedin Yisrael le'mikra. Shaloikadin of a guy, you could be choited that it's like shaloikadin of a yid. But shaloikadin of a yid, me'ikra din is also no problem. The only reason why shaloikadin of a yid is a reich get is because atu kedin of a yid. So therefore, kedin of a guy, you could go your atu kedin of a yid. But shaloi kedin of a guy, you should be going your atu kedin of a yid. That's too much of a stretch. That we're not worried about, and therefore afilu reich hagetim. Abaya asked Rabbi Yosef, the Yosef become an asagi. Abaya found his Rabbi Yosef that was forcing people to give gittin. Omar lay. So Abaya asked his Rebbe, we're not in the position like a bezdin, a musmach, like a bezdin from Eretz Yisrael. We're in Bavel. We're not in the position to be able to make such determinations and force gittin. We are non-hedyoitos, anan. We're merely hedyoitos. We're not musmach. We're not in Eretz Yisrael. We don't have the koyach of a bezdin to be able to be ma'asa get kidin. And I'll prove it to you. With Tanya we learned, whenever you find batedinim or tribunals of goyim, even though they pass in al pi Torah, they follow Choshen Mishpat, nevertheless, you're not allowed to go to them. It says, the mishpatim are put in front of Bezdin. They have no access and koyach to paskin. Dover achar, and this is not a machloikis, it's telling us another additional thing that you learn from Lifneim. Lifneim v'lo lifnei hedyotos. What type of Bezdin kapaskin? A musmich like a Bezdin in Eretz Yisrael. Hedyotos, like we are Zokabaye to Rabbi Yosef. We have no right to make such piskei halacha. So how in the world could we be ma'asagit? Overlay, Rabbi Yosef answered, we're not paskening, they're paskening. The Gedolei Olam, the Musmachim Me'achar paskening. We're just a shikking. We're just following their instruction, but we're not really doing anything. And you find other halachas of psak that we also take on the role of the shliach of Bezdin. But they didn't today. Paskin on loans and when there comes moed to a loan and getting people to pay, these are all things that we do paskin on nowadays. Frankly, why? I would not put it in them because we say solichusayu koavdinam. We were sent directly from the Gedolei Olam from the Batadinim and Extra. Frankly, Ihachi gezelos v'chavolos now. Gezelos and chavolos as well. Now chavolos is nezek char ribu sheves and boishes. That could only be assessed by a proper bezdin. Zealous and careful. We're not a proper bezdin. But if you're telling me we're just doing the shlichus of the bezdin next row, so let's talk to them those things as well. So tomorrow, kiyav din and shlichusayu. Where do we say that we're considered like shluchei bezdin, the mills of the shchicha, things that are very, very commonplace? Get mulus is commonplace. Unfortunately, it happens that we have to force someone to give a get. Halvoins are commonplace, but halvoins aren't commonplace. Therefore, we don't have that mandate from the bezdin in Eretz Yisrael. The mills of the shchicha of dinon shluchasai, we're not doing your studies. So, frak toitvis, two questions. First of all, geirim, we need a bezdin. We're not a proper bezdin. So how could we possibly make geirim nowadays? So Toitvis in the second of our the mills of the shchicha, Toitvis asks for Masha Onu Mekabim geirim. Afal Gab the Geir Tzarach Gimel Mumchin Kid Omer Bachayleitz Mishpit Kosabei the Marid Avdinish Luchusayu the Choshev Kishchicha. A ger being the geir is considered shchiach. Ubachayleitz Nami Mashma so you Mekabim geirim bebabel. They were Mekabim geirim. That was very good in the time of the Beis Hamikdash when there was a bezdin in Eretz Yisrael. But now even in Eretz Yisrael there are no more mumchim. So how can we say that here in the Chutzlart we're shluchim of the bezdin in Eretz Yisrael? There is no bezdin in Eretz Yisrael. In time of Hechi Avdinin Shlichusayu, who after they mumchim even in Eretz Yisrael, who meet in other rishos, who is appointing us to do these adjudications? Yes, Loimar the shlichus the kamoy Avdina. We were appointed from the Friedrike. When they were in power way back when they were still up in Edrin, they gave us a mandate to do these things that are shkia. And that's why we're able to do it. Musa, that's why we can make gerim, that's why we can paskin on hidois, valvois. Gavaltik, we finished this daf. We only have about a blot and a half left until we are going to be zoicha to make a siyum on the Masechta. I want to wish everybody a wonderful vach, a good vach, a mazel tov. We bench Rosh Chodesh today. We should be zoicha to all of the brachas or the tefillas that we made in Birchas HaChodesh. We should have a wonderful, wonderful week. Good vach. Moshe Shabbos was wonderful. Everything clapped Baruch Hashem beautifully.